May 25th, 2021 City Council work session to order, and I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Dr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Walden?
Here.
Ms. Shinholster? Mr. Reynolds?
Here.
Mr. Mullins?
He on his way up the steps now, stairs.
Okay. And Mr. Chambers?
Have you got a camera? I'm here, Bo. I believe Dr. Lee's gotten some hit.
We do have a
I
quorum
just
present.
called on the phone.
All right, we do have a quorum present, so at this time, I don't have any comments to make tonight. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Griffin so we can dive into what we're here for, the budget discussion, so.
Okay, I just want to share a couple of pieces of information with y'all before we start fielding you all's questions. We have adjusted the budget schedule to have a budget approved by the last meeting in June, which is June 22nd. If we wind up having a budget agreement by then, we can, you know, agree on what's going to be in it and just kind of put it on the shelf and then approve it on that night by choosing that specific date, which is the last meeting in June. And I would hope we could do it by then. That helps Bo know when to run the ad for the budget actually being adopted. So we had originally said June 8th in the original schedule, but I think based on the discussion that we had, it may be June 22nd, and that's fine as long as we run the ads when we need to. Let me go ahead and share some quick information with you about ARPA funding. That's the American Rescue Plan Act, which I'm sure most of you know is the replacement in the Biden administration to the CARES Act for COVID relief. GMA shared this morning on a call that OPB should be releasing the ARPA allocations for individual cities by tomorrow. GMA staff seemed to be very happy with the amounts of what they were seeing on ARPA allocations. So we still don't know specifically how much that will be for Milledgeville. Ms. Danzy and I have worked together. We have submitted the vendor form that's necessary for OPB and received confirmation that that was received. We have submitted the city's W-9 form. In the information that we submitted on the vendor form, we let them know what our DUNS number and SAM's number were that we already had. That was one of the things that GMA told us early on, that if you didn't have those, go ahead and get them, and we do have them. SAM's number is not required, but it's going to make tracking the spending and reporting back to the feds a lot easier. The DUNS number is, and we already had both of those from previous grants and allocations from the feds. I forwarded to you all on Friday, I think it was, and put in your books that were in your boxes, budget preparation information, what you all had asked for in the last meeting, as well as consolidating all the other information that had been given to you, so that you could have it all on on 3 sheets. There still is some information that you all need from an expenditure standpoint on CSH, water, and sewer. I'm working with Ms. Danzy on that one to make sure that our depreciation in that regard is shown correctly. Actually, let me say it this way, to make sure our depreciation is understood correctly by me. It is shown correctly on the form. I just want to make sure that I understand what is being depreciated on those, and I should be able to share that with you before the end of the week. A little bit of history based on some of the discussions last week. Ms. Graham shares with me that it is her recollection that the last Carl Vinson Institute of Government salary study was done sometime in the late 90s. Now, the pay scale sheet that we are all using right now has a January 2012 date written on it. Ms. Graham shared with me that that date is on there because that is the last time any dollar figures on that pay scale were changed. So in other words, the pay scale that we're using in terms of determining what dollar amounts are used for compensation have been in existence since 2012. She also shared with me that it was that with the last Carl Vinson Institute of Government study that was done, the salary scale was supposed to be increased with cost of living adjustments each year, and that obviously had not occurred. So that's put us behind just a little bit in terms of salaries, and I think may have something to do with the reason our salary scale is a little bit squirrely. Lastly, I had what I think is a really good meeting with 3 of the 4 department heads that addressed you all on their personnel request and an increase in compensation for their personnel request. The only one that was not there was Mr. Haddon, and he had planned to be there, and they shared a memo with me that he did sign off on. I'm in complete agreement with everything that's on the memo, and I will share that with you all when I share the CSH expense information with you. I shared with them that in my proposal, there had been an across-the-board compensation increase request, and that I was going to be working with you all to try to fund that, and I think some of the information that I shared with you on Friday will show you where that can be funded. We left that meeting with agreement that they supported that across-the-board increase, and then down the road, maybe not before or maybe as late as January, we would look and see what kind of adjustments needed to be made on the salary scale and determine if, and that would be determined based on if a Carl Vinson Institute of Government study was done and what that showed. So that's what I've been working on budget-wise since our last meeting that I wanted to share with you all. And with that, Mayor, myself, and Ms. Danzy will take any questions that anyone has.
You're on mute.
Mute. Okay. I want to speak in regards to the police department, and this information is coming from the budget preparation information sheet. Richard, I remember you're saying in our last meeting on the budget that the majors and the chief, as for we won't look at a salary increase. I went back and looked at my notes from last year, and we didn't give them a salary increase, and we had said we was going to come back to it. I'm not sure if we gave them an increase or not, but let me finish up before, and then I'll come back to the questions that I have.
Okay.
So from our last meeting, we were saying from the lieutenant on down for a 3% increase. So we were told by you that the county has upped their funds and it's tremendous. I didn't realize it was that much. We're talking about like $15,000. And Georgia College also. Down below on B, we say the police department, additional sworn officer, $68,000. That's not exact, I'm just roundabout. Is that really for one officer? Is that including retirement, insurance, everything, which is 68,000 for one officer?
It is at the current rate, at the current starting rate for PD officers. And that does include pension and family insurance and FICA and FICA Med.
Okay, so, and I may be doing this wrong, but the way I calculated it for an additional 2 officers is correct, and the third, but then the fourth, I'm coming up with 272,000 instead of 247,000.
Let me make sure I didn't change some numbers there when I was typing that up. Hold on just a minute.
You got to watch him, Dr. Lee.
We're dealing with money, right?
I was typing this up pretty late in the day on Friday
I might
afternoon.
be wrong. I say I may not be doing it right now.
I had 247, 284, 72. And you got 272, so that's correct. So that would be 272. You are correct. I mistyped some figures there. So.
Okay.
And I actually had sent you all that earlier, and I'm trying to find where that is. Because this was consolidating some information.
So I'm just wondering if that's any way that we can reconsider maybe giving an increase to the chief and the 3 majors. Is it 3 or 4 majors? 3.
There are 3 right now, but they would be, if we did an across the board increase, they would be included in the across the board increase.
Okay.
The across the board increase, if you look at number 5 in the information that I sent you, y'all,
Right.
breakdown of costs of all staff compensation increase with the following criteria. All of the sworn positions as well as the other employees at the PD would be included in that staff compensation increase across the board. And there's no there's no percentage on that. In other words, we couldn't say that each person got 3% or 2% or whatever the case was, based on the fact that we're doing the increases based on their hourly compensation rate.
So, and maybe using the wrong term, but on the annual budget sheet that you gave us for the police department, I guess there were 2, 4, 6, 8. The latter 8 people, which I would say unclassified. Y'all may use another name for not unclassified, which are not with the department. They actually won't be getting an increase, right? But they'll be getting an increase across the board.
They would get the increase across the board. That is correct. Chief Swikert's increase request was for sworn officers only.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's the 7% to 3% increase that I showed in the budget preparation information that I sent on Friday.
Okay, so the ones who are getting an increase, that we're looking at giving an increase, they won't get it across the board also, right?
Say that again. Let me make sure I understood you right.
All right, so the individuals that we're looking at giving an increase, they would not get an increase across the board.
The sworn personnel,
2, right?
they would get an increase across the board if you chose to do the across the board increase. The across the board increase
Right.
would give every employee for the city of Milledgeville except me, who is a contract employee, an increase in their salary.
So that's in addition.
If you all approved an across the board increase and then approved one of these percentages that Chief Swikert asked for, that would be an
Okay.
addition for sworn personnel. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But then are you saying on B is already included, right?
B, it is not included.
Not included.
No, there is, the B is for new positions.
Okay.
So there is no, that was determined based on the current starting salary for our sworn officers.
Okay.
I want to make sure I answered your question, Dr. Lee, did I?
You did.
Okay.
You did.
And yours, Mayor, did I answer yours? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Were you finished, Dr. Lee?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I have a question. Because when we talk about across the board salary increases, you continue to make those that are on the higher pay grades, you continue to make the salary structure, you widen the gap, because a certain percentage of, on someone that's making $80,000, like 7% on that would be $5,600 versus somebody making $20,000 is only $1,400. So you still continue to widen the gap
But on
in the
this
salary.
sheet, but on this sheet, it says, on number 5.
I saw that where he did so much,
increase
like 50 cents
And then
and,
60 cent for,
yeah,
and
but.
70 cent for those making under the 90.
Right, but then we had talked about this, they had mentioned something about the 7% or so much of a percentage across the board. So
Right.
that's what I'm talking about. I see this as well. But, so I kind of would like to do something, but maybe at a certain pay grade, do something a little bit different. And I noticed that that's how you broke that out when you did the 70 cents, the 60 cents. And then those that are making $25 are up. So if we're planning on doing the salary study, and I don't know where the pay grade is for those that are at 60 cents, but I would be willing to, the ones that are $25 an hour and up, leave that off until we get the salary study and fund the rest of it in the budget. That's just
In the
my-
across the board increase?
Right,
Okay.
that the way you have it broken out here, 60 and 70%, cents an hour. I wouldn't have any problems doing it that way. And then the upper level positions, just letting them wait until we do the salary study to see where we are with them. That would help your entry level, patrol officer. Maybe we need to look at that a little bit differently.
It
but
would, and
it would help that
that's
too.
exactly right, and it would, I mean, obviously, it would take less money to do that initially.
Right.
Part of the reason that I shared with y'all what the information that I did in number 3 was I wanted you all to see what potential revenue was available based on what you all had shared with me to do last week in terms of deactivating those 2 positions and then reducing the insurance cost to 5%. But I see your point, and we could certainly do
Or
that.
even something like, maybe the first half of the year doing those and then waiting until January to do the increase for those that are making more. I'm just trying to, Mr. Mullins always talks about us being top heavy. And if we do across the board, you continue to make your top even
Yeah, I've
heavier.
never been in favor of
Me
across the
either.
board, because
Me either.
3% of $50,000 is more than 3% of $25,000.
Exactly, and that's the problem that I have
That's the reason
with
we
it.
did this,
Yeah.
because I'm the same way. That's the reason cost of living
Always
percentage
bothered
increases
me.
always
It
bother
does.
me.
It does.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, and that's what I was looking at. Because, like I said, 7% of $80,000. There's a big difference in that you're giving to those versus what you're trying to do to assist those who really are the ones that need to be brought up. So, and that's your lower end employees that actually get in there and do all the work. So. That's just my idea of the
And
way.
what we can do is, by the time I send you all additional information on Friday that the requests have been generated from this meeting, we can back that 50-cent increase off based on the people at that salary level, and let you know what kind of money we're looking at then if we just do the 70 and 60% increases.
Okay.
So,
That would be good.
That would be good.
gotta get my green pen out again.
What did we do last year?
Only a one-time $500 bonus.
Okay, so there was no increase.
And actually,
there was
that was, help me out, Shay, that was actually in 1920, wasn't it? I mean,
1920.
meaning budget year.
Like, whoa, wait a minute.
We did a $500 bonus right after we came back from our planning meeting in
2020.
Athens. So that would have been in the 2019, 2020 budget. So in the 2020, 2021 budget, Mr. Chambers, we have not done anything in terms of compensation increases, which is the budget we're currently in.
for anyone.
That is correct.
Well, personally, I like the way you've done this in a descending scale with the per hour basis. So much per hour, and you're looking at maybe, I'm not sure if I'm doing this in my head right or not, but maybe a 3% on the 20 and under. Depending upon, it gets a little bit higher as it goes down with that 70 cents. And, the only thing about the percentages that I've seen is about the police department. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think we're talking about the same thing,
That
Steve.
is to try to become competitive or become competitive again, I guess I should say.
That was what was shared by Chief Swikert. He felt like the initial request for 7% salary increase would make them competitive from a hiring standpoint, as well as be able to have a better chance of keeping the folks that he had. We've been fortunate in terms of applicants this year because I believe we still are at only one open position with PD, and that's because we had a sworn person who left to go to another department. Now, when I say only one open position, we've got, I believe it's still 3 currently that are in mandate school. But we anticipate that they will successfully complete that and then come back as sworn officers, so.
But also, too, keep in mind, Steve, that when we look at being competitive, what we pay as far as retirement and the percentage of insurance, because I know what some other people are having to pay out of pocket for insurance, it still makes us, it allows us to be competitive, especially since we raised the entry-level salary. And, perhaps we need to look at doing that much again in this budget cycle, to make it competitive with those around us. But we pay out a lot more per employee than most people do.
Pension plan.
Pension plan and insurance.
Sure do.
And I certainly understand that, but I think if that's going to be the situation, and I think a pay study should reflect that and not just hourly wages. That's usually what comes back to us, and somebody is making 35,000 and others are making 40, but yet you don't have apples to apples if you come down to benefits and everything else.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
We
because
could require
that's
that
one
of the
thing
pay
about the way
study.
that this has been presented is that it is eye-opening when you start looking at what someone makes with their benefits and everything else.
Yes,
paid.
indeed. But we could ask whoever do the salary study to include that in their findings, so that when we, present it to someone, they would be able to see exactly what it is that they're getting for that position.
And one of the things I would like to give to you all before the salary study is even completed, and we've kind of talked around this a little bit, and once once we get into a budget cycle, or into the new budget cycle, this information can fairly easily be determined. It'll just take a little bit of legwork. But I think what would be beneficial even before the salary study is data for us to look at the average salary of everyone with the same position.
That's true.
And figure out what that average is, and then we can determine how many people we have above average, how many people we have below average.
Exactly.
Good
The
idea.
below average, we may decide even without a salary study, we need to try to look at bringing those people below average up to average at that point in time. And we can also compare that to, which you don't get into longevity with this information, but we can also compare that to the DCA information, salary information that's put out every year, just to kind of see where we are in terms of where we meet with a city our size. So I know that Sandra keeps a running spreadsheet of employees and their salary level, and if that changes in any way, or when we advertise a new position. So based on the fact that she keeps that in Excel, I can take that Excel information and figure out average salaries very quickly, as y'all well know.
That would be
And
good
I think that would be good information for y'all. That we may even, I may even be able to get that together and send it to y'all Friday with this other information. But I think that would be a good piece to look at, at least in addition to the salary study, to know where we stand. So part of the problem with our salary scale, with our pay scale, and this is, I mean, this is just fact. It's nothing. I'm not talking ill of the pay scale. But part of the issue with the pay scale that we currently use is there's nothing in there from the standpoint of the actual scale itself that looks at longevity. You know, if we had been doing a percentage cost of living increase each year for that salary scale, is I've been led to believe that the last Carl Vinson study suggested, that would have created even greater differences between those people when they start and those people that are currently here. What I have tried to do is basically when we look at beginning salaries, we look at the pay scale number, and then letter A, B, or C is the starting salary for a new hire, depending on what kind of experience they come in with. And then from there, as I've gotten requests from department heads, I have tried to make each letter equate to somewhere between 3 to 5 years of longevity. Now, that's very minimal when you look at the differences that occur with that, but that at least for me tried to give me some standardization. And it could be that when we look at these averages that I'm talking about, we take some of that out of the discussion, because once we look at getting everybody up to at least average, then that takes a little bit of that longevity piece out of the process and kind of gets things standardized a little bit better. So.
Okay.
But what I'll try very hard to get those averages by Friday, but we definitely can let you all know what we would save if we back off the 50-cent increase in the graduation breakdown as we have it there. And then what we will do is, based on what that ends up being, we will break down again. If you notice, the second part of number 5 is Ms. Danzy has put together whether that's a general fund expenditure or a water sewer fund expenditure or solid waste expenditure or a stormwater expenditure, and then that will give you some idea about what we have no great concerns that the enterprise funds will take care of the increases that we're showing on here. And then, you know, we're about $25,000 short on the general fund increases with the way we've gotten it broken down, so that may wind up equalizing that out in the, what you see available on number 3 is what we could use for the general fund increases.
Hank, can I ask you a question about
ma'am.
number 6? And it's just for my own curiosity. So, I'm not quite sure how to word this, but what is it about the fire department that makes them have so much more overtime than the police department?
Well, in 1920 and to date this year so far,
He's stuck on 1920.
I should just say FY20 because that's the way I refer to it all the
Yes,
time.
that way.
But I talked to Miss Danzy and she uses a different terminology than I do. So I'm gonna say it the way I understand it. The way in FY20 and so far in FY21, which is the year that we're in now,
Right.
a lot of that is based on 2 things. And one is that we have had a fair number of firefighters out on workman's comp over the last 2 years.
Okay.
And number 2 is whenever we had firefighters, and this was the case with police officers as well, whenever we had first responders across the board out with COVID, we paid current employees overtime
Okay.
to work in those positions. And that was paid for with the CARES Act money. That did
Okay.
not come out of general funds. In terms of 18, 19, I don't know. I can't really answer that question because I wasn't watching the budget at that point in
Right.
time. But I can tell you for FY20 and for FY21, that was the reason behind those.
Okay. I was just curious to
Yeah,
know what.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. When I
Excellent.
put those figures down, I was a little bit surprised at
I
the figures.
am. I'm surprised to see that because I know we had the police department working overtime.
Right.
And I expected their overtime to be higher than, it looks like it's running pretty average, even with us having them working overtime.
That's right.
But I'm just.
With the special street detail during the
Right.
pandemic.
So I'm just amazed at the fire department's numbers, just looking at this. So that's why I was just curious.
You know, one of the things, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but one of the things that the improvement in the ISO rating required was a minimum staffing level at the fire stations that I'm not real sure had ever been followed before.
Okay.
So when you think about the number of people with the fire department that are currently out on workman's comp, that we can't fill those positions, and we still have to have that minimal staffing level for ISO requirements, that greatly drives up the
Well, I
overtime.
mean, and that's understandable. I just looking at
Right.
the numbers, I didn't know.
More.
Yeah. You know, it's a 24-hour work shift as well,
Right.
so it's not, they don't work the 80 hours or 40 hours a week or 80 hours in a pay period that we typically think about too.
And you paid out, use CARES Act as well too with the police overtime, correct?
That is correct. All first responder overtime was paid for with CARES Act.
So that's right, there's a little-
Once we got those CARES Act funds.
Do you think with these positions that they have asked for, because there's a whole lot of positions here if you look at all the departments, do you think that for us to go ahead and do this budget and do the across-the-board raises and all that, do you think that they could possibly wait until like the first of the year to see how our budget is and what situations we're in before we start with the other positions?
With the department heads that I met with yesterday, I can say that I believe at least 2 of those were in agreement with that. The third one, I don't recollect there ever being an opinion either way on that. I think with Mr. Haddon, who was not in the meeting, but I think based on the discussions I've had with him, he would be fine with that. The other thing too that I'll remind you about on the pollution control plant, the wastewater treatment plant, whatever you prefer to call it, we have said that we think we will be able to use some ARPA money to improve the SCADA system, which would allow whoever's working at the water treatment plant to be able to monitor what's going on at the sewer treatment plant as well. So that would buy us some time. Mr. Haddon is under the opinion that, you know, probably at least within the next 2 to 3 years, EPD is going to require the wastewater treatment plant to be staffed 24/7. But until that point in time, if we get this improvement in the SCADA system, that we think we can spend ARPA funds for as part of the water sewer infrastructure that those funds will allow, then that plant can be monitored electronically that way.
Okay.
So to answer your question, Ms. Walden, at least for those two position requests, that would be the case.
I want to throw something out there right quick, and as far as these positions are concerned, and I went down through them and kind of gave them ratings from what I felt like we needed most to what I felt like we needed least, and I'm not going to give you that information, but there are two positions that I really wish we would look at filling, or I guess maybe that would be created, but one is the facilities maintenance worker. And that I just think we need. I can't believe that we have all the buildings and everything else that we have, and we don't have anybody looking out after it, other than when we call somebody in for emergencies, which certainly cost us more than it would for a person to be there full time. The other is an additional stormwater person, and or I guess they have it listed as laborer. And the reason I advocate for that is that we stole from Peter to pay Paul to get this thing going. We've got a little bit going with it, and now we're going to get additional patching equipment, which is going to put that much more on Tim and his department, and you know, especially with all the potholes that we see now, and we get all that going. Something's going to suffer somewhere, and I don't know that one person would make a difference. I don't know, you know, whether or not you could even take that facilities maintenance worker and have him work part-time patching holes. I don't know, but somewhere we've got to put a little bit of extra help in, and I feel more so inclined along that stormwater, either public works, either one.
And we
Throw that out there for anybody to comment on.
We are for sure gonna get the code enforcement person. I mean, that's in the budget already, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's open. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he said he was gonna advertise for that.
You know, what I would, my comment to that, Mr. Chambers, would be that if we were going to look at adding an additional person, we might want to look at adding initially an additional person to streets and sidewalks, because that's the department that the 5 people were pulled from to send to stormwater.
Okay.
So we could do an additional person, an additional street maintenance worker initially, if that was your favor, and that would create that you're talking about. Plus, I think it would give Mr. Thomas the manpower that he needs. You know, before the changes occurred in with the stormwater enterprise fund and those 5 people coming from public works over to stormwater, one of the things that we were able to do was have a person dedicated to downtown maintenance, and I think that was a good thing to have, you know, because that person took care of the downtown area, they took care of the area around the city hall, they took care of the grounds at the police department, and if we have an additional, at least one additional street maintenance worker that might give Mr. Thomas the manpower that he needs to have somebody working a little bit more frequently downtown. Right now, we have temporary workers working downtown, and they basically are making sure trash is kept picked up and the trash is kept emptied. So I think the streets and sidewalks may be the place that we need to look at if we do add a person as opposed to stormwater, just simply because streets and sidewalks are where those 5 people came from when stormwater was created.
Okay.
That sounds good.
I still have a question about the receptionist for the Public Works Administration.
Mm-hmm.
I asked about it at our last meeting. There's someone you said that is there doing the work. Well, is this a necessity?
There is an administrative assistant position in the Public Works administrative area now. Mr. Thomas requested that position, the receptionist position, I think because he wants to use the administrative assistant position in more of a, for lack of a better term, coordinators type role, as opposed to being the one that you know, answers the phone and greets people as they come in the shop. Let me answer your question this way. Is it a necessity to keep Public Works operating at the current level that it's operating at? No, it is not. But the key is there at the current level that it's operating at.
So if you take that administrative assistant person away from the Public Works, she does more than just answer a phone, right? The times I've been out there.
The administrative assistant person at Public Works basically is the office manager for Public Works is what it boils down to. I mean, she does all the financial work, the purchase requisitions, all of those things. But Mr. Thomas's request is not to do away with that administrative assistant position, but add an additional receptionist position to that.
Took that person away, and then you did add somebody else. That's just gonna put more work on him, trying to get his requisitions and all that stuff.
We're not.
Yeah, we're not gonna take that one away.
No,
And Mr. Chambers, just as a comment to you, I've asked Mr. Thomas in our meeting yesterday that he was in to, I shared with him that you all had an interest in having some idea about what that facilities maintenance would do. And he is putting together what would be a preventative maintenance schedule for all of the buildings that the city has, and going to get that to me, and then I can share that with y'all to let you know that that would be a big driving purpose for that facilities maintenance worker position.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good position for the city because, you know, just Allied Arts had a committee meeting yesterday. We have a facilities committee, and the question came up about they used to have a part-time, I guess, facilities maintenance person, and now they don't. And they were talking about all the things that you know, like the when they had to get a contract to tighten the rails on the steps and you know, just to meet ADA standards. And so I told them, you know, let's just, instead of thinking about how they can ask for an additional person in the budget, perhaps this position, I was thinking on that term, perhaps this position would be able to assist with that because those are city buildings as well. So as we think about it, we have to include those buildings
Right, yeah.
in that maintenance plan too.
Well, I think all buildings, no matter what, and one thing that concerns me is that we've and maybe it needed it the worst, but we put an awful lot of emphasis on City Hall over the past decade or so. And thank goodness we're doing something to the Dunlap Fire Station now and trying to bring it up to date. But we've got, you know, a good bit of things we probably need to be looking at all the way around.
Yeah, we're also we're also spending a fair amount of money out of what was left of their budget in the 2012 SPLOST on the PD. We're putting a new roof on it and actually replacing all the HVAC units on it. So as things like that start new, taking care of them from a preventive maintenance standpoint is even more important.
Right. Yeah. Get much more extended life out of it.
Right. We will, I started to say we will. Let me say, it appears most likely that we will have a formula to use to determine if we are able to do any revenue replacement with ARPA money. We have seen what that formula most likely will look like so far. Part of the problem with it is the feds want to be very specific in how they define fiscal year, and GMA and National League of Cities has been working very hard to share with the feds, you need to let the government entity follow their fiscal year in the calculations. So that may be one of the things that they share with us tomorrow, but as we look back at ungenerated revenue during FY20 and FY21 that we can document may have not been generated because of the pandemic, there may be the potential to do some revenue replacement with the ARPA money on that. Now it won't come anywhere close to using what I think we're going to get, which is good. It shouldn't, because we've got some other things that we'd like to do with that from an infrastructure standpoint. But that might help us. You've heard me talk about sustainability, and sustainability is important. But if we're able to utilize some of that ARPA funds for replacement of revenue, that may give us what we're able to look at in the FY22 budget in terms of positions and the upper level salary increase that Ms. Shinholster's talking about with some of that revenue replacement money. And we will have that revenue replacement money available to us for at least 2 years, possibly 4 years. The way it appears ARPA is going to work right now is we will get half of our allocation this calendar year. They're not saying fiscal year, but they're saying calendar year. So it may be in 2022 fiscal year for us. And then we're going to get the second half 12 months later, whenever that first half comes in. 12 months later, we'll get the second half. As long as you have the ARPA money obligated or encumbered by the end of 2024, you can spend it through 2026. So we've got a really wide range of time there that we have. And that's understandable, because especially if we're looking at it to use some of it with some infrastructure pieces, you've got to have the engineering on that, and then the bidding on that, and then the contractor in for that. One of the things that you all are voting on at the meeting, 6:30 meeting tonight, is what I shared with you, the contract to engage Turnip Seed in doing the engineering work on the belt press for the sewage treatment plant. That will replace the centrifuge, which is having some difficulty right now. And if we do the engineering on that now, and that ends up being a piece of infrastructure that we can spend ARPA funds on, then we can pull the trigger on that very quickly. And the really good thing about the belt press is that was already something that Turnipseed was recommending we do in the water treatment plant refurbishment anyway.
Hank, I've got a concern, and I guess I'm hearing you correctly on this, in that when we get these funds, we have to be real careful in how we're going to allocate them, and allocating them toward sustainable salaries or ongoing salaries is going to push the bucket on down the line, and I don't want to get down the line and see the bucket's empty. I think I'm hearing you right, and that some of those replacement revenue could be used for salary. Is that correct?
The replacement revenue could basically be used for anything that you used your general fund expenditures for. So to answer your question, yes, that would be correct. But as I have shared with y'all before, my concern with that is the sustainability that you're mentioning.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It ends at some point, and then you've got to pick up where it left off. And I'd rather see you pay for contract labor, pay for an engineer, or pay for those what we have come on that don't necessarily happen year in and year out. And employee salaries happen year in and year out, definitely.
Yeah, and I think we will. I think we will have the opportunity over the next 24 months, or over the next 2 fiscal years, to be able to look at some potential to generate additional revenue, whether it be through franchise fees or annexation and those kinds of things that I know that you all already have some interest in, and that we'll look at, most likely in early 2022 calendar year. So that would help a little bit with that, but that was what I shared with y'all and what I shared with department heads, that one of the reasons why I did not put in my recommended proposal any of these new positions was because while we might be able to fund them now, the sustainability concerned me, and I didn't want to hire people and then 2 years later have to release them.
Right, I agree.
I think we will have a better idea come January on what our revenue is going to look like post-pandemic. And that may enable us to be able to make some changes based on the revenue that we're assured of, not from the revenue replacement of the ARPA funds. It would tickle me to death not to have to use any of the ARPA funds for revenue replacement and be able to use them all for infrastructure projects, which we know we could very easily do. I mean, just, most likely if you look at what I'm being led to believe, if you look at the belt press project and the improved SCADA system that I've discussed, that's probably between the two of those, that'll probably be close to $1.25 million right there. So, I mean, it doesn't take long to spend $1 million when you're dealing with projects like that. So,
when I went back and looked at the last meeting you all had, you had some pretty meaningful and robust conversation in terms of the budget. So if you have any questions or you want to put something else out there, we're about 4 minutes out before we close this meeting out. Any more questions?
let me just make sure I got my action items together. Come back and let you all know the savings associated with pulling the 50 cent per hour increase out of the across the board increases, and then attempt to, which I think I can do, get the average salaries of the positions to you and maybe even associate those with the averages based on DCA figures. Anything I missed? All right, Mayor, if that's all the questions we have, then I've got my next little green list.
All righty then.
By the way, I look back at my green list for last week, and only about 50% of them dealt with budget issues. So some of those things I'm still working on, like retreat and those kinds of things, so.
You did good with that sheet, that,
Yeah, I like
put
that.
everything together.
Listen,
That
this
was really
one over
good.
here to my left, she supplied those figures, and bless her heart, and then had to deal with my questions on them, so.
Thank you, Ms. Shea, for hard work and working diligently and getting everything put together with Mr. Griffin. So if nothing else to discuss, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, then.